Please carry on. Thank you very much for giving us time. Please go
Thank you
ahead.
for the opportunity to be with you, sir. I thank every one of you for this wonderful opportunity to be with you this evening once again. I think I came to you on the first or the second day. And do you remember what we discussed on that day? What was the topic that we discussed?
SWOT analysis, sir.
Oh, thank you so much, Kavya. Thank you. Yes, we did SWOT analysis on the first day. I think the module benefited you in assessing yourself as a teacher, and it helped you know your strengths and weaknesses. And maybe you've begun working on the exercises that I suggested towards the end of my presentation. Today, we are going on to discuss something completely different from that. Let me share my screen and begin the presentation. 1 second. Yes, I'm here. I think you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good, good, good. I may be switching off my screen and switching it on again, off and on in the middle to see you also together. Sometimes when I post a question or when I expect your interaction or your inputs like we did last time. I'm sure you're all ready for that. Okay, the topic today is pedagogic strategies that we need to adopt in our classrooms so that we can manage multiple learning styles of our students. As we go ahead with this, I just would like to tell you that I have broken my presentation into 4 parts. And part 1, I'm going to discussing what are these learning styles, and then, how do they arise and all that. And then we are going to discuss the individual learning style of each student and the various kinds of various styles. And finally, we are going to check how these learning styles impact our classroom performance, our role as teachers, and how do they help us become better teachers. And if we ignore them, what happens? If we take them into account, what happens? This is what we are going to see towards the end of my presentation. I think you've understood the structure of my presentation, the 4 parts. What are they? How do they arise? Right? What are their causes, etc. And the third, the various learning styles. And finally, the implications. How is it significant to us? If I show you a slide, maybe you can take a stand on each one of the 3 questions that I'm going to ask you. You can just say, when I give you 2 alternatives, A and B. For instance, you choose A, you can just write in the chat box A. And there is a second question, there is a third question also. For instance, you prefer A for question 1, and B in question 2, and B again in question 3. You can just say A, B, B, or whatever, right? I think you've understood what I want. There are 3 questions. Each question has 2 preferences, A and B, A and B, A and B. So you can make an option. You can think for a minute and make your option and write in the chat box. So the first is, do you prefer reading or listening? Question 2 is, do you prefer watching a picture or reading a description below the picture? And the third question that I'd like to ask you is, do you like to study independently or do you like to study together with other people in groups, combined study as we call it? You can choose. On the left side you have A, on the right side you have B. Can 1 or 2 of you unmute yourself and give me your answer? 1 or 2 of you.
A.
Okay. The next one?
AAB.
AAB. One more?
A, sir.
Okay. So these 3 answers suggest that all 3 of you do not learn alike, right? The 3 answers are completely different from each other. So there can be any number of variations like that. Like you are different in your preferences, automatically your students also are different. Isn't that right? So they have a class of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 students, whatever. Your students are bound to be different as far as their preferences, their learning styles are concerned. I think we are on the right footing, and then in case we have understood that there are differences in our approaches to learning, we can begin our session. Do our students learn differently? This question has been asked indirectly already, but what I'd like to do is I'll show you a video now. This video is a little long, maybe about 6 or 7 minutes, but I think it's worth watching. You might have seen it also, but you might have seen it just like that, but today you're going to see it with a purpose. The purpose is, after you have seen the video, you have to answer me these 3 questions. Question number 1 is, do all students learn the same way? My first question already answered that, but find answers to this from the video now. Do all students learn the same way, or do they learn differently? My question number 2 is, what do these differences depend on? How do they originate? What do they depend on? Why are students different in their learning styles? And different, maybe we're not talking about learning abilities, we are talking about learning styles, their attitude learning. Right. And the third question is, how does knowing these differences impact the teaching learning process? Does knowing it impact our teaching process in the classroom, our classroom performance? How does it do it? So these are the questions that you need to answer, and you're going to see a video now. After you see the video, I'm going to ask you these 3 questions, and you must be ready with the answers. As I told you already, the video is a little long, and please watch it. I'm sure you will enjoy watching it.
Albert Einstein once said, everybody's a genius.
Is everybody able to hear the audio?
Yes, sir. But there is no video, meaning the picture, the slide is only one slide.
Sorry, I think. Okay, you're not able to see the video?
Yeah, now I can see a picture of a fish, slide number 6.
Yeah, but you were not able to see the video then?
No, sir.
I'll close it and then I'll come back to sharing a different way. Maybe what I'll do is I'll share a window, or maybe the whole screen. Maybe this will be better, I think. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Albert Einstein once said, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today on trial we have modern day schooling. Glad you could come. Not only does he make fish climb trees, but also makes them climb down and do a 10-mile run. Tell me, school, are you proud of the things you've done? Turning millions of people into robots. Do you find that fun? Do you realize how many kids relate to that fish swimming upstream in class, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless? Well, the time has come. No more excuses. I call school to the stand and accuse him of killing creativity, individuality, and being intellectually abusive. He's an ancient institution that has outlived his usage. So, Your Honor, this concludes my opening statement, and if I may present the evidence of my case, I will prove it. Proceed. Exhibit A. Here's a modern-day phone. Recognize it? Here's a phone from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Stay with me. Here's a car from today, and here's a car from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Well, get this. Here's a classroom of today, and here's a class we used 150 years ago. Now, ain't that a shame? In literally more than a century, nothing has changed. Yet you claim to prepare students for the future? But with evidence like that, I must ask, do you prepare students for the future or the past? I did a background check on you and let the record show that you were made to train people to work in factories, which explains why you put students in straight rows, nice and neat, tell them sit still, raise your hand if you want to speak, give them a short break to eat, and for 8 hours a day, tell them what to think. Oh, and make them compete to get an A. A letter which determines product quality, hence grade A of meat. I get it. Back then, times were different. We all have a past. I myself am no Gandhi. But today, we don't need to make robot zombies. The world has progressed. And now we need people who think creatively, innovatively, critically, independently, with the ability to connect. See, every scientist will tell you that no two brains are the same. And every parent with 2 or more children will confirm that claim. So please explain why you treat students like cookie cutter frames or snapback hats, giving them this one-size-fits-all crap.
What's your language?
Sorry, Your Honor, but if a doctor prescribed the exact same medicine to all of his patients, the results would be tragic. So many people would get sick, yet when it comes to school, this is exactly what happens, this educational malpractice, where one teacher stands in front of 20 kids, each one having different strengths, different needs, different gifts, different dreams, and you teach the same thing the same way? That's horrific. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant should not be acquitted. This may be one of the worst criminal offenses ever to be committed. And let's mention the way you treat your employees.
Objection overruled. I want to hear this.
It's a shame. I mean, teachers have the most important job on the planet, yet they're underpaid. No wonder so many students are short-changed. Let's be honest. Teachers should earn just as much as doctors, because a doctor can do heart surgery and save the life of a kid, but a great teacher can reach the heart of that kid and allow him to truly live. See, teachers are heroes that often get blamed, but they're not the problem. They work in a system without many options or rights. Curriculums are created by policymakers, most of which have never taught a day in their life. Just obsessed with standardized tests. They think bubbling in a multiple choice question will determine success. That's outlandish. In fact, these tests are too cruel to be used and should be abandoned, but don't take my word for it. Take Frederick J. Kelly, the man who invented standardized testing, who said, and I quote, "These tests are too cruel to be used and should be abandoned." Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we continue down this road, the results will be lethal. I don't have much faith in school, but I do have faith in people. And if we can customize healthcare, cars, and Facebook pages, then it is our duty to do the same for education, to upgrade and change and do away with school spirit, because that's useless. Unless we're working to bring the spirit out of each and every student, that should be our task. No more Common Core. Instead, let's reach the core of every heart in every class. Sure, math is important, but no more than art or dance. Let's give every gift an equal chance. I know this sounds like a dream, but countries like Finland are doing impressive things. They have shorter school days, teachers make a decent wage, homework is non-existent, and they focus on collaboration instead of competition. But here's the kicker, boys and girls. Their educational system outperforms every other country in the world. Other places like Singapore are succeeding rapidly. Schools like Montessori, programs like Khan Academy, there is no single solution. But let's get moving. Because while students may be 20% of our population, they are 100% of our future. So let's attend to their dreams. And there's no telling what we can achieve. This is a world in which I believe. A world where fish are no longer forced to climb trees. I'll rest my case.
So that's the video. I'm sure you've enjoyed watching
Albert
it,
Einstein.
even if you had seen it
I once
earlier.
said,
I'm sure you enjoyed seeing it a second time or third time, whatever. So the question is, when we can customize everything starting from cars and phones to your menu on the table at a hotel, why should not we try to customize our classroom or curriculum or education also? Already some effort has been happening in places, but I think perhaps we are nowhere near the expected goal. So coming back to the questions that I started with, first of all, have you all liked the video?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, very much.
Yes, sir.
Very much.
Very interesting.
Thank
Yes,
you so
sir.
much. It's a lovely, impressive video, and I typically show only very short videos, but I thought though this was a little long, this suited and this fitted the occasion perfectly, and that's why I chose that. So the question one that I asked you is, do all students learn the same way, yes or no?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, certainly no. I think everybody, I don't think anybody has a second answer to that. They absorb differently, they process data differently, they understand things differently, and the way even they retain that information inside their brains is different. And when you ask them to recall the information, what happens in their brains again is different. So psychology has proved that individuals learn differently, not only just the process of learning that happens in the classroom, but the way they handle data and handle information, starting from observing to recalling, everything is different. So this is what the video tells us, and also this is all we know. And the second question that I asked is, what do these differences depend on? The video does not directly answer it, but it gives lots of hints on this. What are a few things that it depends on the difference? Any answers from you?
So they have different aptitudes, different strengths, different weaknesses.
Thank you. So it's aptitudinal. Okay, one. Any other difference? Any other reason? Do you think genetics plays a role? Biology, genetics. Does it play a role? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And then does the cognitive processes, the learning processes that happen inside us, do they also play a role? Does environment play a role?
Yes,
Does
sir.
the
Yes,
classroom
sir. Very much, sir.
structure play a role? And most importantly, does the teacher play a role? Does
Yes.
the teacher also contribute to these learner differences, learner styles? Yes,
Yes.
it does.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
so there are many, many factors: biological, cognitive, psychological, social, emotional, environmental. All these are the factors that cause these differences. And finally, of course, you need not answer this question immediately. Maybe when we go to the last part of my presentation, you will see this. How does knowing these differences impact teaching learning? The case that's made in that video that you saw, the last part of that video says, don't expect to teach fish to climb trees. So let's customize our teaching, and also let's expect different outcomes from different students. Let's offer them the whole platter, and let's give them the freedom to choose things, especially with regard to the subjects they learn, the speed at which they learn, the way they learn, the pace, the place, and so many other factors. So this is the video that you saw, and these are the questions that I wanted you to answer. In case I ask you to give me, why do we teach in the class? Anybody at school level, college level, university level, for that matter, any level, any age, any country, wherever teaching happens, what do we try to achieve by teaching? Anybody? There is a clue there on the screen.
Knowledge transfer.
Correct. Very good. Wonderful. That K stands for knowledge. Okay. Knowledge transfer. Fine. And what does S stand for? Why do teachers teach?
Skill.
We
Skill.
build skills. Yes, teachers build skills. There are lots of institutes where skill building is the most important objective of all teaching that happens. And in fact, without skills, knowledge is useless. So knowledge plus skills is the beginning. In fact, anything needs to happen after the education is over, after student leaves college. Naturally, knowledge and skills both must go hand in together. And the third one, A, stands for
Application.
Attitude.
attitude.
Application.
You can add other things also. Application is right. Somebody said aptitude. That also is right. Yes, knowledge. Whatever happens in the classroom must also build the right aptitude, right attitude, right application. Skills and application go together. So knowledge, skills, and aptitude. Easy to remember KSA or ASK. Ask. If you remember ask, you can remember these three. This is, I've not created this acronym. This is a very popular acronym. So the objectives of teaching are typically these three. I've left some blank spaces there in case you want to add a few more objectives. Why you teach, why anybody teaches, you can add them later. For instance, somebody said aptitude there, somebody said application there, and you can add lots of other things as well. But basically, any teacher anywhere teaches to transfer knowledge, to build skills, and to build the right attitude. Right? These are the objectives. These are the objectives. There is something that's not allowing us to achieve what we want to achieve in the class. Our objectives are okay, AKS or ASK or ASK, whatever, in whatever order. So our objective is clear, but we are not able to achieve what we want to achieve. I am a teacher, I've gone to my class, and some students are not coping with the class. Some students I'm not able to reach them. If my objective is to ensure that learning has happened, not syllabus is completed. Some teachers say, I've completed my syllabus. The syllabus is over. I finished the syllabus. I finished the syllabus. That's not the objective. The objective is to ensure that learning has happened from the student's point of view. When the whole focus must turn to the student, and when we make the education, I think your entire 1 month long orientation program had lots of modules to ensure that learning happens in the classroom student centered. So if it has to become student centered, what are the factors that are affecting learning in the class? A few factors are the learning preferences. We've already seen that every student prefers to learn it different way. Then institutional environment. Some colleges are good, some are not good. Some offer good infrastructure, some do not. Some have best laboratories, some do not have. Right? Institutional environment, the kind of other students that are there, the kind of teachers, the kind of, lots of other things that happen in that. That's some kind of the environment that the institution offers. That also leads to it affects learning. Then the teaching learning materials that you use. Not all teachers use materials. Even when they use, not all of them use them effectively. I have a wonderful tool, but if I don't, for instance, just an example, suppose I showed you this video without giving you the questions. Just imagine, so I wanted to show you a 6-minute long video. Suppose I did not begin by asking you the questions, I directly showed you the video. Your focus on the video, your attention to the video, I don't think will be the same. Because I asked you the questions first, you were focused and then you were trying to answer the questions, and at the back of your mind, you had those questions and you tried to answer those questions. I think it made it easier for you to answer the questions. And suppose I showed you the video first without any questions and suddenly asked the questions, maybe recalling would be difficult. So it's not only having materials, but how to use the materials is some knowledge that the teacher should have. That's a skill. So teaching and learning materials is the third thing that affects the process of learning. So good material must be available. For instance, good material includes good textbook, good equipment, maybe even if it's a blackboard, if it's a good quality blackboard, if you are using a chalk piece, a good quality chalk piece, whatever. So all the materials that you use, they can be highly advanced technological tools like it's PowerPoint, slideshow, digital boards, and whatever you have in your college, whatever your college offers. But do you know how to use them? Suppose I have a digital board in my class, but I don't know how to use that, or I don't know how to use it effectively. Again, the learning process is affected. So these are the 3 factors that affect learning. There is a 4th factor. The 4th factor is the style and the methodology of teaching. What style? Teaching with a tool is different. Teaching a style is different. How do I teach? It includes your body language. It includes your tone. It includes the way you identify all kinds of learning styles in your class, the effort that you make to ensure that everybody is in your class is with you, and all that, and the methodology that you use. So I think you know a lot about that methodology. I think again you have lots of modules on that. Is it a lecture method, or is it an involving collective collaborative learning process that you practice in the class? What kind of pedagogical tools and pedagogical practices and methodologies that you use in the class? So these are a few things that affect in the class. Maybe some of these things you have hardly any control over. Maybe the students' learning preferences, institutional environment, the materials that you use in the class. I don't think all teachers have control. Even when your college is autonomous, I think you can make very few changes to the environment in your college. Though you can affect it, but not much. For instance, there is fixed furniture in a classroom. It's like an auditorium with furniture that cannot be moved about. So it will be very difficult to organize a group activity in your class. If the furniture is movable, it becomes a little easier. But you cannot change that easily, even if you tell your principal, perhaps the principal, even if he's a very kind and generous one, he may need time to do that. So it's not easy. But there is one thing that you can change. It's completely in your hands. Your teaching style, your methodology is in your hand. You can make lots of changes to that so that your objectives are met easier and more effectively. Right. So we have to begin by knowing our learners. That's the final outcome of what we have discussed so far. So I need to know my learners. If I know my learners, I can identify their goals, their needs, their objectives, why they have come here, and I can begin affecting their learning so that they all learn better. So what should I know? I need to know their learning preferences and the factors that affect those learning styles and preferences. What factors? Cognitive factors, emotional factors, environmental factors, etc., etc. Knowing is not enough. Putting them into practice and identifying solutions and working with a plan and achieving, bigger goals is the expected outcome. So knowing is the beginning, right? Once you know these things, it becomes easier for you to work with a plan. Now, coming to the actual part of my presentation, this has all been so far some kind of an introduction to why we should know the learning styles and what should we do with them. Let me begin by going into history a little, and then let me tell you that history has, over the last 150, 200 years, a lot of research has happened on this field. And people have come out with lots of models to tell us that students learn differently, students look at things differently, students assimilate information differently and recall that information differently, etc., etc. So the first one to give us a model of this learning styles was Walter Bergbaum. What did he do? He said that there are three kinds of learners, right? What are the three kinds of learners? The visual learners, the auditory learners, and the kinesthetic learners. So VAK, the first letters of these three words makes it popular as VAK model, VAK model. So the VAK model says that there are some students in your class. It can be 20%, 20%, 30%, 50%. We're not talking about percentages, but there are some students in your class who learn visually. And there are some other students who prefer to learn auditorily. They use their ears and then they learn. And there are a third set of students who are kinesthetic. So they prefer to do things and learn. Right? So unless they put their hands to something, unless they are given an activity where they are physically involved, they move about, they do something, they handle something, they touch something, then only they learn. So this was the first model that was propounded by Walter Bergbaum. But immediately after that, Neil Fleming, he added one more letter to that model. Instead of VAK, he said VARK. He said, no, it's not three, it's four learning styles. So it's not only visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, but there is one more style that's called reading and writing. So there are students, Fleming said, there are a few students who learn only when they write, only when they read, and it's different from visual. Just by seeing it, just by listening to it, they don't learn. They must read it, they must write it, then only they learn. So this was another proposition. Then after that, maybe we'll stop here and see another short video to let us know what these 3 or 4 styles are, and then how do they learn, how does it benefit us. This is about 3 minutes. Please watch it again.
We all can become better learners. How? By understanding our learning style. How do you learn best? First, we need to understand what learning means. Learning is a process in which we acquire a skill or knowledge. In order to learn, our brains must absorb, process, comprehend, and retain information. Therefore, when it comes to the learning process, how do you learn best? How you learn best depends on your learning style. We all have strengths in the way we learn. Your learning strength will be your learning style. What are the different learning styles? The 4 that are the most popular and recognized learning styles are visual learner, auditory learner, reading and writing learner, and kinesthetic learner. First, let's take a look at a visual learner. A visual learner learns by seeing, learns more easily when information is presented in a visual manner, such as with pictures, video, charts, maps, and diagrams. Auditory learner. What is an auditory learner? An auditory learner learns best by listening and speaking. These type of learners tend to enjoy listening to music, stories, and prefer spoken directions over written directions. What is a reading and writing learner? These type of learners learn best through words. If you enjoy reading and or writing, you may be this type of learner. The last type of learner is a kinesthetic learner. This individual learns best when they can move. When they can move their body, use their hands, or sense of touch. A kinesthetic learner learns by doing. How can you benefit from knowing your learning style? You can use those learning strategies and tools to support how you learn best. You can also
Okay, we'll stop there. But what I'd like to tell you here is that maybe after watching that short video, you know that there are 4 learning styles, and each kind of students learn differently. Can any one of you unmute yourself and tell me, how do auditory learners learn?
So by listening, I think.
By listening, by speaking, by listening. They work with their ears, perhaps, and then they learn best when they listen to something. And how do visual learners learn? Anyone
By
else?
seeing.
By seeing. So suppose you write something on the board, they see it. Suppose there is a book, they watch it, and then they learn. So there are different kinds of students in your class. So the lesson that we learned from that video and also the earlier slides that we have seen is that in my class, there are a few visual learners. If I don't use the board, if I give only a lecture and go away, one section of my students perhaps find it very difficult to follow me because I have nothing on the slide, nothing on the screen, nothing on the board. They have nothing to see. They are only listening, but it does not appeal to them. Or if I show everything but do not speak or to allow my students to speak in the class, though they don't speak, they don't listen, but I have a book given to them. For instance, I give them a book, go and read and learn. So they cannot do it because unless they listen, they cannot learn effectively. So there is another section that's denied a wonderful learning opportunity. So the answer, or the outcome of this so far is that there are types of learners in my class, and I must keep at the back of my mind, am I meeting the learning needs of my students? Does my class have something for each kind of these learners? So is it only one style, or does my class take into account, does my lesson plan take into account all these 4 or 5 or 2 or whatever the number of learning styles that I know or that my students are? So if I know this question and if I keep it at the back already, I think you've learned what I wanted to tell you today. Now, there is another kind of classification. There is not exactly a learning style, but maybe some kind of a learning purpose. So students learn for different purposes as well. So there are learning types. So, I'll not spend much time on that. Perhaps you can understand it on your own. McCarthy suggested that there are innovative learners. The first category, they enjoy interacting with people and they want to make the world a happier, better, brighter place for everybody. They seek a meaning for themselves and they look within some kind of learners who are creative and innovative, right? Then there are a second section of students in your class who are analytical, logical. They apply logic to everything. They draw on facts and they reflect everything that you teach them. They apply their mind to it and they reflectively add to the world's knowledge. And there is a third set of students who are common sense type. They just believe in finding solutions to the problems. They are very practical. They are just straightforward, and their purpose is not to think of very big things, but just to make things happen. If it works, it's fine. That's all. Even if I do not know how it's working, I must make it work. It's common sense, right? And the last category are the dynamic ones. They just do not accept information, data, they synthesize it. They try various possible combinations. They're very highly enthusiastic. They are adventurous. They try new things, extremely creative. So they analyze, they synthesize, they assimilate, and then they experiment. So these are the dynamic kind. So this also helps us if we keep that in mind, because students come to the class for various purposes. Why have they come? Why have they come to leave? I mean, the learning styles aside for some time, but why have they come to my class? Have all of them come with the same purpose? No. So they have come for a different purpose. If you, for instance, if you do some kind of a survey and if you ask them, or if you administer a kind of a survey questionnaire and try to know from them why exactly they are in your class and what have they come here for, their answers would certainly be different. So this is one yardstick that helps us know why students are there in your class. Then there is one more inventory that has been created, a learning styles inventory, which says there are 4 stages, not styles, stages of learning. So they begin with concrete experience. Students typically, when they feel, when they touch, when they have physical experience of something, they learn. From there, they go to reflective observation, where they watch things and learn. And then the kinesthetic kind of learners, they do things, and by active experimentation, they learn. This may not be in that serial order, but I'm just telling you there are 4 kinds. Then there is another category who think, the thinkers, the scholars. I think typically they are branded as the brightest, but they are bright only on one parameter. Maybe they are very good with their thinking skills, even abstract things they can conceptualize. Difficult subjects, subjects are difficult to understand for others, these people can easily understand. So this is some kind of the 4 stages. Maybe students move from one level to another, and perhaps in case we can lead them to the brightest level. Brightest again is not always the 4th one, where suppose there is somebody who is at this stage. If you can move him for one more level, I think it will be a great achievement as a teacher. Then going on to something that is a little more recent. So Felder-Silverman learning styles suggests that he's not talking about these 8 or 9 or 10 learning styles, but he is putting all these learning styles on parallels, on pairs. Well, he says students are either visual or verbal. Students are either inductive. It need not be students, actually learners. Learners need not be your classroom students, anyone, wherever you, even formally, informally, young and old, whenever you are learning something, you can be an inductive learner or a deductive learner. Induct proceeds from specific to the general, and the deductive learners begin with the general and go to the specifics. Then he said learners are either sensing type or intuitive type. So some are, they are oriented towards facts, basics, very practical, or they are very highly innovative, creative. And then learners are either active or reflective. Active is those who try out things and who work with others, and reflective, they prefer to sit alone and think, analyze, and learn, work on their own, work alone. Then there are sequential or global. There are some learners who progress from one level to another level linearly, in a very systematic order, typically simple to complex, easy to difficult, etc., etc., incremental, gradual. Then there are global learners, thrust everything at them, they can make sense out of it. They learn in large leaps, not necessarily installment wise. So they can leap from one stair to another stair, and they can learn in big chunks. So this is another way of looking at it, and Felder-Silverman proposed this, and he said that there are 4 sets of learning styles. And coming to the most important one, this is what the last theory I would like to present you, and maybe we'll spend some time discussing each one of these styles. So this study tells us, this is actually a study that was conducted for psychology purposes as a part of psychological insights into the human learning process. But it was so popular, the way this theory was propounded became so very popular, that all that was said became immediately relevant to academics. So teachers and academicians curriculum designers, materials producers, all of them became so very interested in Gardner's multiple intelligences theory that they immediately caught on that, and then they developed, whatever was relevant to them based on this. So this is the theory that is most popular today, the Gardner's theory. So according to this theory, there were 7 learning styles. The 8th one was added later. This last one, naturalist, was added later. But he suggested there are not 3 WAC model, not 4 WAC model, not other kind, but there are 4 learning intelligences, multiple intelligences. He called them not styles, but learning intelligences. So everybody is intelligent in a different way. And if he's intelligent in a certain way, we will exploit that, we will use that, and we'll approach him a certain way depending on what his intelligence is. So what are these intelligences? Verbal, which is also called a linguistic, right? Those who learn most when information is presented to them in the form of words and language. Words and language are the tools with which they learn. Then the logical, also called mathematical. Logical and mathematical learners love when it's presented in the form of numbers. Then there are the third category, visual and spatial. These love images and space, right? And that's how they learn. We are going to see each one of them in a little more detail. The tactile and the kinesthetic, also pronounced kinesthetic. Some people call it kinesthetic. Don't worry about the pronunciation. Both pronunciations are correct. So tactile or kinesthetic, body movement. They use body to learn. So the physical movement of the body and use of limbs, use of hands, movement within the class, outside the class, etc. is what they learn with. Then there are musical or auditory learners. They learn with their ear. They have a sense of music or rhythm, etc. And when they listen to something, they learn best. And there are interpersonal or social learners. What do they do? So they are best when they work together with others. They work in a group and they interact with people and they love forming groups and they learn from each other together better. Then there are intrapersonal, within. So intrapersonal or the solitary kind of learners who love learning on their own, alone, right? And the last kind are the naturalist. As I told you already, this is the category that was added later. The naturalist learners or the naturalist intelligence depends on environment, the world as a whole, etc., etc. Let's look at them in detail. So the first one are the verbal learners. I think the name itself indicates that these learners, these students, learn from words. And stopping here for a minute, suppose, can any learning happen without words? I don't think. Any subject, whether you are teaching physics or statistics or English language or Sanskrit, whatever, you have to use words anyway. But using words itself can be a task, a very, very important issue in the classroom, depending on what kind of words do you use, how do you use, and then how do you present those words to your students. Then how emphasize, what kind of emphasis you put on words, whether in writing or on the screen or when you speak or whatever. So it's not speech or it's not the visibility, it's the words, the phrases, the sentences, the language that you use. That's what's important. So suppose there is a teacher whose language is not good, whose vocabulary is not big, and whose vocabulary is not apt. What happens? The student loses track, despite all the care that you've taken, because they are focusing on the words that you've used, they are focusing on the sentences that you've constructed, they are focusing on your grammar, your English or whatever, your medium, the medium that you use, etc., etc. So for instance, I have some 6 lines of text here. If these 6 lines of text are very small, if the font is very small, if the font is too very large, if it's not too colored, or if it's too very crowded, they don't like it. They look at words are important to them. So maybe it's something like a whole text presented with some words underlined, some words bolded, right? So what happens? So the student's attention immediately goes there and he grasps from there. I saw quite a lot of teachers I mean, this is my practical experience. They put so much text on the slides, so it becomes just like a textbook. The whole paragraph is there on the slide. What happens though you presented it? I mean, the whole text is there, a whole definition is there. The verbal student, does not understand that. He immediately develops a kind of a dislike for it. I mean, the words that you use and the way that text is presented should be impressive for a verbal learner to participate in a class. So what do? You can, I mean, whatever you do in the class is okay. All these things that are suggested are fine. These are the strategies. So to help your verbal students, these are some strategies. So what do? All these things. So you can use acronyms, you can use some keywords. Most importantly, you can advise them to reread it, and you can incorporate quizzes, word games, and you can underline text, you can bold text, etc., etc., etc. If there are some verbal students in your class, and if you identify them as predominantly verbal, I mean, it does not mean that somebody is only verbal and nothing else. Nobody is just one kind. Everybody is every kind, but maybe one of the styles is predominant in a person. If you find a predominantly verbal style learner in your class, and if that student approaches you to help her by suggesting some career choices, so you can suggest them that they can become poets, journalists, writers, teachers, lawyers, politicians, translators. So these are some job opportunities for them. So maybe you are teaching physics, you perhaps are not a career counselor, you are not offering them employment opportunities. Your job is perhaps to teach your physics and then you go away. But maybe you can still help them, you can go beyond what your basic duty is and suggest, suppose, because the student has not been told by anybody, he thinks that he must excel in physics and then he must become some expert in that subject alone. But he will, even if he's a physics teacher, he can be a poet. There's nothing wrong in that. Even if he's working as a scientist in some laboratory on a physics-related subject, he can still be a writer. So if you suggest and if you motivate these students to become any one of these things, I think it will be more useful to them. Then there are the logical learners. I think the name itself indicates logical, mathematical learners. What do? They apply logic to what they are learning. So in case you present them your information, your subject knowledge in the form of a riddle, something that they need to resolve, something that they need to solve, a problem. So if you present it to them in the form of a problem, they love solving it and they enjoy it. I experienced it many times in my own class. The moment you ask them a riddle, so they become attentive. At least 10% of them, 20% of them, they are there in the class. They become so very suddenly active. Even the sleeping ones wake up. So they love asking, if you ask them questions in the middle of a class, and then if you ask them some difficult questions, and if you ask them to interpret things, something very abstract, if you present to them and then if you ask them to interpret, where critical thinking is necessary, lateral thinking is necessary, critical thinking, creative thinking is necessary, going beyond the box, so out of the box thinking is necessary. So then they love learning it. Statistical information, statistical data, factual data, all this, they love it. In case you have logical students in your class, you may advise them to become researchers, accountants, mathematicians, computer programmers, scientists. I think that's where the logical learners are needed, logical thinkers are needed. So because they have this logical learning style, logical intelligence, so they can be motivated to become any one of these things. There may be many others, I'm just giving you a few ideas. Then there are the visual learners. I think you already said visual learners learn from images, from objects that they can see. So if you take a chart to a class, when we were young students, our teachers, some of our teachers used to bring charts, huge charts used to be there. They used to carry it to the class and they used to display it, especially biology, zoology, and some other social studies teachers. So now charts perhaps are no longer necessary because you have technology available. All that you read is perhaps a PPT, and then you take it to the class. The chart is already there. You can show it to them. So when you show the visual learners, easily get attracted and they learn easier than teaching. Suppose a 50 minutes class, may not do what one chart does. If you have, you're sure to have some visual students in a class, and for them I'm talking about. So visual aids, imagery, slideshows like this. Suppose, just now imagine I show this slide without this picture. I have a picture on the right side, and suppose I write this text on the whole slide and I don't have any picture on this. Some students, for instance, some other kinds of learners may like it, but visual learners will certainly not like it. Visual learners will find it very boring, very dull, lifeless. I don't think they'll continue sitting in this. So this picture, this color combination, this text, everything going together. So I'm trying to meet more than one style on each slide. Okay. Now, in case you have visual students in your class, you can suggest them to become navigators, sculptors, artists, painters, architects, visual artists, interior designers, etc. So all these professions, need visually intelligent students. So they may be engineers, they may be postgraduates in biology, whatever. That apart. So they shine in case they take to these subjects, right? Sculptors, for instance, visually intelligent, and their learning style is visual. Similarly, painters. Okay, right. The next one is a tactile. What is tactile? Touch. Tactile is kinesthetic. So the tactile learners or the kinesthetic learners, they touch, they physically do things, they get involved, their body must get involved in the process of learning. Unfortunately, this is one great difficulty with the online learning process. In an online learning class, there is very little that we can do for these tactile learners, but still we can do something. For instance, maybe we will try something. I think we have 36 minutes still. Perhaps we can try something. Please do this activity along with me. Whatever your name is, the first letter of your name, my name is Raju, for instance, the first letter of my name is R. Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes time. Within 2 minutes, you have to identify a physical object where you are sitting in your room, in your house, perhaps the next room or in the same room. Some object, it must be on your hand, something not very big, something very small, not an abstract idea, a concrete object which you can hold on your hand, beginning with the first letter of your name. Shall I repeat? So try to find some object around you and get that, hold it in your hand. The condition is it must start with the first letter of your name. Your time starts now. Yeah, if any one of you have brought anything. Salim Mandal, you brought a water bottle, but your name begins with S. So you have to identify something that begins with S, some object whose name begins with S. Yeah, I think Kavya has got a key and Soumya has got spectacles. Punya has got a pencil. Neena has got a notebook. Shraddha has got a sanitizer. Neena has got a notebook, etc., etc., etc. Can anyone switch on the video and show me any one of the objects that you... Paulami has got phone, okay. And Salim has got a smartphone. Thank you, Paulami, thank you. I think everybody has a phone on hand. Okay, Safin has got a stapler, S-T-A-P-L-E-R. Good, 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 wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let me go back to my presentation. Are you still able to see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Good, good. So, can anybody tell me, how did you enjoy doing this? This looks perhaps a silly activity that we did. Maybe it's good for school children, but how did you enjoy doing that?
Really enjoyed, sir.
Why did you enjoy
The first one, it was kind of confusing, really. And I was looking here and there that what I should find and show yourself.
Okay, maybe the instructions were not very clear. You got a little confused.
Actually,
Or
I
maybe
was
you
also,
started,
sir. It is a
maybe you
name.
started doing it before I finished my instructions. Sometimes students are over enthusiastic, so they don't wait for all the instructions to be over before you finish them. I mean, they're already on the job. Okay, what I was trying to tell you is, suppose you have some, I mean, not exactly this, but maybe some activity where students, suppose you have a very dry lesson, even if you are doing it online, maybe in case you give them some assignment where the student has to get out of the chair at least, or you can at least ask them, okay, all of you get up and then sit back. One small thing. The tactile learner becomes very alert again and he loves learning, and then he continues. Otherwise he gets, distracted. He gets, his interest is diluted very soon. He cannot, sustain that interest for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes only. After that, do you know why TED talks are only 18 minutes long, never longer than 17, 18 minutes? Because they've done a lot of research and they found that, sustaining the interest of somebody for longer than 18 minutes is impossible. But we are taking classes as long as 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes like this. And they go on longer also. Some people take 2 classes together, 3 hours, 4 hours. But TED, I think you know about TED. So TED has established, TED proved, beyond doubt, that after a lot of research all over the world, they've said that it's impossible to hold the attention of anybody for longer than 17 to 18 minutes. So anyway, coming back to this, so there are tactile learners in your class. So what do tactile learners do? Tactile learners learn all this way. So they have, they want to write or draw, with their hands, So they want huge spaces, they want hands-on experience, something they want to do. They want some problem-solving exercises, again, pen and pencil, worksheets. Suppose you have a handout in your class, suppose you have a worksheet, suppose you have a role play. You ask to come to the front, and language classes have plenty of opportunity for role plays. Even science subjects, I saw some teachers doing it even in science subjects. They do great jobs, right? So in case you have this in your class, the tactile learners are benefited. So tactile learners become very good artisans, actors, athletes, craftsmen, etc., etc. And then there are musical learners. The musical learners, as the name indicates again, are the auditory learners. So they, I'll stop this. Don't worry. So the musical learners or the auditory learners are those who learn best when information is presented to them in the form of audio. It can be an audio, it can be musical, it can be a song that the student is asked to sing or the teacher sings. It can be a rhyme. Young children, particularly when you go to lower classes, so students love learning through music. So music is a wonderful medium. When I was teaching at college, that was very, very long ago. I think I told you last time when I met you. So I retired from service some 10 years ago. So more than 10 years ago, rather. So during one of those days, when I took a song to the class, and I tried teaching them through that song, when I asked them to join me in singing, I think it all became so very explosively pleasant for them that they are even those who never used to participate in classes became all of a sudden very active. And not only that, not just active, not just singing, but their learning improved. Right? It became very easy for them to learn. So loud reading. So these students, you might have seen some students, even this, unless they say it out when they write something or when they listen to something, they repeat. So if you don't allow them, they can't learn at all. They do loud reading, etc., etc. So in case you have students like this, you can ask them to become musicians, disc jockey, singers. A very huge field is there. I think there are plenty of opportunities for those who are good with singing. Especially in the olden days, there were not many opportunities. There used to be only 1 or 2 singers, and then they became popular and nobody else came. But today, the TV channels, every TV channel has a musical program, and so much opportunity, so much talent, especially young people shining very well in these fields. So you can become composers, lyricists, music critics. Music criticism is again another field where there are plenty of job opportunities, especially if you're teaching at the graduate level in arts subjects. And if you want to guide your students, I think there is plenty of opportunities here, right? Okay. And the social learners. Social are interpersonal learners. Social is another name for interpersonal. So they learn when they are in groups. So I think many of you, maybe there were modules here during this 1 month program while you are here, how to engage your students in interactive, interpersonal activities, how to organize a group activity, how to organize a pair activity, how to promote, projects, how to promote collaborative learning. So these were some of the things perhaps you've been taught here. Even otherwise also you can learn them. Once you engage your students in such kind of learning, automatically, their learning becomes much more stronger and better. So you can facilitate discussion, you can allow a lot of collaborative learning, you can brainstorm ideas when all students, participate in the activity, and then they all participate, and you can compare each other's ideas. You can have lots of discussions, debates, sharing ideas with each other, group work, etc. These are things that can be done in the class to promote opportunities for social learners. Okay, they become best researchers, theorists, philosophers, politicians, salespersons. I think there is a wonderful opportunity there. They become good teachers. Social learners are great teachers. Then social workers also. Then the solitary learners. I think the name indicates solitary is intrapersonal, within. How do they learn? They learn best when you leave it to them. So they study alone, they learn alone, and they connect what they have already learned to the new concepts. All that they need is opportunity for them to think, feel on their own. And even problem solving, instead of doing it in groups, they do it alone, quietly, they apply their mind. For instance, if you look at a chess player, so I think it's not group activity, it's a single solitary activity. So they apply their mind, they analyze, and then they work on it. And they have a lot of introspection. They, whenever they need to think and then analyze things and then come out with solutions, they do best. And what will they become in case they get good opportunities? They excel by being counselors, philosophers, critics, writers, statesmen, etc. These are the best career opportunities for them. The last one, as I told you, the eighth one was added later, are the naturalist intelligence, the naturalist learning style, or the naturalist intelligence. So these are people who look at the bigger picture, not just the classroom thing. They want to go out. So I think even when we were children, we used to be taken out on picnics, excursions, exhibitions, educational tours, etc., etc. Maybe we did not appreciate why it happened at that time, but today we realize how much we learned through that. So it was not just going out and spending a day or two, but it was much, much, much more impactful than what we learned in the classroom. So what we learn from our peers, what we learn from the environment, what we learn by observation, I think they go deeper into our heart and mind. So we find patterns, we are very good with classification. We relate things to what we have learned in the class, we relate to our daily life. For instance, in our botany class, we used to collect leaves, flowers, and we used to press them. We used to our own herbarium and that kind of things. So naturalist learners are very, very good with classifying. So there are 100 objects. So this 50 is this category, this 50 is that category, that 4 is one category, this 7 is another category. So they are very good with that. And they love doing experiments, and they love working on projects. They work on case studies, etc. And such people become very good photographers, very good natural scientists, adventurers, explorers, etc. So this is for the naturalists. Okay, I think with these 8 kinds of learning styles described, and I also, actually I did not want to add this counseling here, but I thought maybe it will help you in case you have any students in a class. That's why I added this part to every slide. But I have a quiz for you now. Anyone can unmute, and then anyone can tell me the question that I ask you. You need to answer. One, you need to identify the person in the picture that I show you, and also you have to tell me what kind of intelligence this person had. I mean, let me give you a warning. So any person, any one of you that you see on the screen may not belong exclusively to one category. He may be intelligent in multiple ways, but what is the most predominant learning intelligence they had? The first one, can any one of you unmute? Who is this? Where my mouse is hovering. The first one on the left. Did someone answering?
Gautam Buddha.
Gautama Buddha. What kind of intelligence was his?
Naturalist.
He was not a naturalist, I think. I don't know. I don't think, at least, he.
I think so. Logical. In Lord
Spiritual
Buddha,
intelligence, sir. Spiritual intelligence.
Spiritual intelligence. There is a name for that.
So there is no option of spiritual.
There is one.
Spatial.
Spatial is. Yeah, somebody said intrapersonal. I think that's the most appropriate to apply to him, because he looked within. I think he was Gautama. Gautama became the Buddha after going into the forest and sitting under a tree. What did he do? I mean, whatever maybe you call it tapas or whatever you call it. He looked within. So within is working solitary, working independently, thinking to oneself, analyzing, and this is something that's happening inside you. So maybe after he became the Buddha, he went around and then spread his word. But even then, I think it was mostly intrapersonal intelligence that he had. I mean, don't think that the answer that I'm giving you is the right one. Perhaps whatever you said also is right, because everyone is intelligent in many different ways, not just one way. But predominantly, I think most importantly, he was an intrapersonal intelligent person. The second one on the left, middle one. Who is it?
Vishwanathan Anand.
Vishwanath, thank you.
Vishwanathan Anand, logical.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Logical, sir.
Great. So you're all agreed on that. I'm happy. So logical. Yes, I gave you an example of a chess player already, and then Vishwanathan Anand is a logical thinker, logical intelligent person, logically intelligent person. And this one, the third one, the bottom one on the left side.
Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, Oprah.
Musical,
Oprah
I think, sir. Then here.
is
Musical.
Verbal.
Sir.
interpersonal.
Verbal, sir.
I think so. I think you gave different answers, but I think mostly she's an intrapersonal. See how she gets along with people, how she moves with hundreds and thousands of people, how she gets them involved, talks to them, and gets them engaged in a conversation. I think that is something that an intrapersonal does very well. I also told you intrapersonals become great anchors, great conversationalists, and they get along with people extremely well. So, I mean, I was giving you examples of pair work, group work in your class. So the one who gets together with other people and works together with other people is the one who naturally is more an intrapersonal intelligent person than any other intelligence. I think this man is very popular, the middle one. I think you all know him. Who is it?
Yeah, Shashi Tharoor.
Shashi Tharoor. And what's his intelligence?
Verbal.
Verbal is
Verbal, sir. Yeah.
the eighth one. Yes. I think words. He plays with words. He does magic with words, right? And do you know him, this gentleman, bottom middle?
Salim Ali, sir. Salim Ali, naturalist.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You are right. Salim Ali, ornithologist.
Ornithologist.
Correct. He was a bird watcher, an ornithologist.
Bird lover. Yes.
Naturalist. He went out to the forest. Perhaps his entire life he spent in the midst of nature, watching birds, photographing them, studying them, and working on them. And this one, the right side top.
Charlie
Chaplin
Chaplin, and the
Sir.
seventh one, Bodily.
Bodily.
Wow, thank you so much. You're all right. Yes,
Bodily.
so I think there is nothing that he cannot do with his body. So his body is so very malleable. I mean, plastic body rather. So he can contort. A contortion is some kind of a contortionist. So he was a bodily intelligent person. Then this one,
Maqbool Fida Hussain, sir.
and
Ahmed Hussain. And what's his intelligence?
spatial.
Spatial, yeah, thank you so much. So he's a painter. He worked with spaces. Oh, massive painting. If you look at a wall, no, you see a wall. When you look at a wall, you see only a wall. But Ahmed Hussein does not see that wall. He sees a beautiful picture there. So I think huge paintings, very massive ones. So he worked on canvas. Anything could be turned into canvas for him. So that was Ahmed Hussein. And the last one at the bottom.
A.R. Rahman musical.
Musical A.R. Rahman.
So that's the only one that's left. And of course, he is very popular also. So his ear, how many creative things he did, and then how many creative musical melodies he created. And I think he's one of the best that we have of all time. So musical intelligence. So again, let me tell you that you might have got confused about one or two, not because you do not know, but because maybe you looked at another aspect of their intelligence too. Maybe some people are intelligent in multiple ways, and that's why perhaps, or maybe some people were intelligent at one stage of their life in one way, and at another stage, Gautam Buddha, for instance, if you look at him as the king, if you look at him as a thinker, or if you look at him as a proponent of a certain new religion that he founded, maybe at different stages in his life, his intelligence was slightly different. Anyway, but of course, even as a king, he was more a thinker, right? Even there, I think you know his story, how he started when he looked at a dead body, when he looked at a diseased person, how he reacted to that, and then what took him into the forest. All that story, I think you know. Okay, so there are questions that can help you, or that you can easily answer if you have to remember a new word. What do you do? These are some questions. I mean, you need not answer these questions now. I'm just showing you. So there are some ways to help us identify what kind of intelligence we are. The next slide gives us two tools. This is one tool and this is another tool. In case you want, you can take a screenshot of this, and after going home, you can try any one of these tests. So these tests help you. Learning style test, for instance, learning style test. This helps you identify your own learning style. And in case you want to spend some time with your students and help them learn what kind of learning styles they are, maybe you can make some copies of that, and then you can take it to your class and you can administer it to them, and you can help them realize. Sometimes we don't know what style we are. We get confused because we learn different times, different ways. But as I told you, predominantly we are one or two or three styles, not all 8 styles. All 8 styles is very rare. So which style we are is easy to read when we do any one of these exercises or answer these quiz questions. So finally, before I close, I just would like to tell you that strengths and preferences are not the same. On the first day we did SWOT analysis. So we were talking about our strengths, what is it that I can do best is my strength. But how do I do that is my preference. So strengths and preferences are not the same. Learning styles change over time depending on the situation. I may be one learning style in my physics class. I may be a different learning style in my English class. I may be a different learning style as a child. I may be a different learning style as I grow up. I may be one learning style as a student. I may be another learning style as a teacher. So it differs from place to place, situation to situation, age to age, context to context. And the science of these learning styles is still not very strong. I think the theories are often contradicted. The theories are often debated. So we are not very sure still how these theories work. So the final solution is, this is of course absolute, this is perfect, and this must be remembered. One teaching style does not fit all. So what do? So we have to have something called inclusive education, inclusive teaching, inclusive approach. So, I have a class where at least 5 to 10% of my students are predominantly each one of those 8 categories. So there are naturalist learners in my class. There are also auditory learners. There are logical learners in my class. There are intrapersonal learners in my class. So what should I do? So I have only one thing in my mind. What is that? As a teacher, have I got something for each one of them in my 50-minute or 60-minute class? If I go to a class for 60 minutes and if I'm meeting the needs of only one kind of learners, so the other 7 are lost. Or if I have only 2 or 3 things, maybe the others are lost. So maybe I have to some kind of an audit. What is that audit? So maybe when I prepare my lesson plan, I can ask myself, is there something in my class for my musical learners? Is there something in my class for my logical learners? Logical learners is very easy. Just once in a while you ask a question instead of just making it a lecture. Every 4 minutes, every 5 minutes, stop your lesson and then ask a question. They are very happy. They become active. Right? You can convert that into a puzzle. You can convert that into a problem-solving situation. You can assign them a responsibility, some such thing. And similarly, a physical, kinesthetic kind of learner can easily be involved once in a while if you have some physical activity. Like I told you, even if you ask them to stand up, change your seat, go there and get this. So that physical movement, even within the class, that limited physical space that you have, if you do that, I think these students get involved. And sometimes you can take some music to you, whatever subject. Again, suppose you take an auditory, suppose you again are teaching statistics, physics, chemistry, whatever subject. You take an audio piece. It's not your voice, it's some other's voice. But still you play that in your class. These days, technology has made it very easy for you. You can carry any auditory learning tools, learning material to your class on your phone. I used to do that even 10 years ago. I did that. So you can take it and then you can play it in your class. See, students love some kind of variety. I mean, instead of all the time your own voice, it's another voice. Right? Appreciate learner preferences. So if there is somebody who learns in a certain way, I mean, instead of discouraging them, you can say, okay, this also is acceptable because this also is one of the kinds that you are bound to have in your class. And offer variety resources. So what are the resources that you are giving to you? You are giving them a textbook, you are giving them a handout, you are giving them a visual image, you are giving them an audio tool, you are giving them an exercise, you are giving them some physical work. So if you combine all of them, or if you do them at least one after another, even if they're not all going integrated together, still I think your purpose is served better and the students learn better. And finally, use multiple strategies for multiple learning styles. This is my final message to you. So because there are various kinds of learners in your class, you must have multiple strategies. You know that they are all there. That's why you need to make changes to your lesson in such a way that everybody's needs are met. Now let's see this last short video and stop there.
पिछले साल वो थर्ड स्टैंडर्ड में फेल हो गए, यकीन करें कि थर्ड स्टैंडर्ड, और सुधरने का कोई आसार नहीं। मेरा बड़ा बेटा हर क्लास में हर सब्जेक्ट में फर्स्ट आता है और वो दूसरा।
Before you continue seeing this video, I think most of you have seen this film, Three Idiots. And do you remember what it's about? This scene.
It is Tare Zameen.
This is from Tare Zameen Par, I guess.
Yeah.
This is from Tare
What is
Zameen
the name
Par.
of the movie? I'm asking you, what's it about? What is Amir Khan going to tell?
So this is about the children education system in India.
Child pedagogy, sir.
Okay.
It's about
Dyslexia?
Ishar Nandakishore Avasthi, sir.
Uh-huh.
A child who has, he's a bit a slow learner, I would say, and how the entire perspective of his learning changes from the
Thank you
start to
so
end.
much. I'm very happy that you know it. Let's
Sir,
watch it now.
Dyslexia.
the child has intellectual
Thank
in
you,
art.
lovely. Dyslexia is the word. He tells us about it a little later. Let's watch it and discuss this.
Child has intellectual in art.
पढ़ाई की तरफ, हर चीज की तरफ, हमेशा बदमाशी, तेवर ही तेवर, कभी कोई बात ही नहीं सुनेगा।
मैं आपसे उसका प्रॉब्लम पूछ रहा हूँ, आप मुझे सिम्टम बता रहे हैं। आप बता रहे हैं बच्चे को बुखार है, वो मुझे मालूम है। मैं पूछ रहा हूँ बच्चे को बुखार क्यों है, वजह क्या है बुखार की?
हाँ तो फिर आप ही बताइए, बताइए।
उसके पढ़ने लिखने की गलतियों में आपने कोई पैटर्न देखा, कोई गलती जो वो दोहराता होगा?
पैटर्न, काय का पैटर्न? सब गलतियां ही गलतियां।
फिर आप पैटर्न पहचान नहीं पाते। जगह डी तो डी की जगह बी, एक जैसे दिखने वाले अक्षरों के बीच में कंफ्यूजन। और ये एस और यार उल्टा लिखा है, बल्कि कई सारे अक्षर उल्टे लिखे। ये देखिए, छोटा एच, छोटा डी, देखा मिरर इमेज। एनिमल एनिमल एनिमल, एक ही पेज पे 3 अलग अलग स्पेलिंग। इसका मतलब कोई एक वाला स्पेलिंग मुझे याद नहीं। दूसरी बात, एक जैसे शब्दों को मिक्सअप करते हैं। टीओपी टॉप बन गया पीओटी बोर्ड, एस और एलआईटी सॉलिड बन गया एस ओ आई लेट। क्यों करते हो ऐसा? बेवकूफ है तो आलसी ना। मेरी समझ से उसे अक्षर पहचानने में दिक्कत हो। जब आप APPLE एप्पल पढ़ती है तो आप अपने दिमाग में लाल लाल एप्पल बना लेते हैं। ईशान वो एप्पल पढ़ ही नहीं पाता शायद, इसलिए मतलब नहीं समझ पाता। पढ़ने लिखने की अक्षरों की आवाज, उनकी बनावट, शब्दों का मतलब समझना जरूरी है। ये अहम जरूरत ईशान पूरी नहीं कर पा रहा।
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, ये सब बहाने हैं पढ़ाई डालने के।
अरे ये पढ़ी श्रावस्ती,
ये कैसे पढ़ सकता हूँ
चाइनीज में? अरे कोशिश तो कीजिए, चलिए ध्यान दीजिए।
क्या बेकार की बात कर रहे हैं, मैं कैसे पढ़ सकता हूँ
इसका बदतमीजी कर रहे हैं, आपका रवैया ठीक नहीं है, आप शैतानी कर रहे हैं। कुछ ऐसी ही कैफियत होती होगी ईशान की, अक्षर ही समझ में नहीं आते होंगे। इस पढ़ने लिखने की तकलीफ को डिसलेक्सिया कहते हैं।
Okay, I think you might have enjoyed watching it again after seeing the movie some time ago. So, what do you understand from that? Sometimes we fail to know, we fail to understand the problems that our students have. So, the problems that the students have, why they are learning, their low performance, is not because they are really weak, or not because they are really uninterested in your subject, but because they have some problem. The problem arising because of their learning style, because of their inability to perceive information the way everybody else is perceiving it. And if the teacher diagnoses that problem and suggests a solution for that, I think the student's life is changed. So I request you to begin working on this and then look at the various learning styles you are likely to have in your class, and then try to improve your lesson plans, try to improve your methodologies, try to adopt and also adapt to the necessities of the classroom depending on the kinds of learners that you have in your class. So I'll stop there. Maybe we have 5 minutes time for questions and answers. Thank you very much for this opportunity. There is my email address on the slide line, nagaRAJU@gmail.com. In case you have any questions about this presentation, please feel free to write to me. So I'll stop there and I'm coming back to see you on screen. I'll stop presenting. I think we have 4 or 5 minutes to discuss. If you have any questions, you're welcome now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any
Thank you,
questions?
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any reason why you switch off your cameras? Is it because of bandwidth, or is there any other reason? Usually last time also I requested you to switch on your cameras, but nobody was willing.
Sir, we were instructed before that we should switch
I
off.
see, I see. Okay, I did not know that. I'm sorry. Okay, maybe that's to save bandwidth, I think, perhaps. But typically classes, at least these virtual classes, become much more livelier, much more interesting in case we can see each other, if we can talk to each other. And face each other. Thank you for switching on your cameras. I see quite a lot. You're all very young people, it seems. I think very, very young. Many of you are new to teaching, I think.
Sir, if there is no questions today, I have been given the opportunity to give you the formal vote of thanks. So, can I proceed?
Please do that. But before that, if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or ask her. Maybe, of course, later also, you can mail your questions to me. You can proceed, Paula.
Okay, sir. On behalf of HRDC UGC, University of Hyderabad, and all the participants of this faculty induction program, I would like to extend my hearty vote of thanks to Dr. nagaRAJU, who spared time from his busiest schedule to enrich us with the thought-provoking lecture. Today, we learn about the different kind of learning models and the strategies for supporting the different types of learners. This will definitely help us in our classroom teaching learning process. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Shall we leave now? It's 3:28. Okay, thank you once again. Thank you, every one of you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.